Hi there, welcome to Bible/Chat. This is our third take on this video. Jason, how you doing on this one? Are you excited for number 3?
Oh, no. Man. I mean, it's a great topic, but
yeah, it is. But
technology.
It's over and over and over again. Technology, you can't live with it.
Can't live without it.
Exactly. Kind of the way we feel about you. Anyway, okay, so we're talking about elder qualifications, right? And the first elder qualification is...
Above reproach.
No.
Oh, no, it's not a qualification.
Wow.
The first qualification is desire. I mean, desire, which is not a qualification, but you have to have that desire
necessary
for the
reality.
work. Yeah. Above reproach is the umbrella category.
And everything that's underneath it is feeding into that reality.
Exactly. Fleshes that out. The first one, which tells you how crucial it is a husband of one wife.
Yeah.
So we wanted to asking you, what's the definition?
Right.
And what are the implications? What's the significance of that?
Yeah.
And maybe even specifics, if you feel free to say that.
Yeah. Well, I think we can talk maybe specifics and even maybe some examples. Actually,
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So to just start definitionally in Greek, the literal phrase is just one woman man. Okay. That's literally what it is. Mm-hmm. One word for the one woman thing. Like a man of one woman.
Yep.
And what is Paul talking about there? Well, I think he's talking about a devotion to your spouse, which is why the translators have translated that as husband of one wife.
Right.
There's a devotion to your spouse. You're not a polygamist. You're not more than one wife, but you're also not. But you don't also. You're devoted to her in such a way that you haven't violated that covenant that you have with her.
Of course.
That is the reality there.
Yeah.
So that you've been faithful to that marriage.
Yeah.
So the very, very first, very basic implication is that you haven't had an extramarital affair.
Okay.
And so we would say
the obvious, but
obvious.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
So we would say a person who becomes an elder and then has an extramarital affair. This is a lifelong qualification. You're then disqualified.
Lifelong.
I think for life. Yeah. So you should step out of ministry. You should not be in that office any longer. You can still minister in the church, but you should never take on again the office of elder.
Yeah.
Because that is a holistically disqualifying thing.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, it's the very first qualification. It's so important.
Right.
And what it's showing actually in a guy is his self-control, his willingness to control his desires, because guys tend to sin in this area.
Of course.
His willingness to control his desires and submit himself to Christ in such a way that he is devoted to his spouse, this covenant that he's made before God.
Absolutely.
And so that reality that's the very basic principle of that. Obviously, it doesn't mean that a person who isn't married can't be an elder, because it's just saying if he is married, then he should be devoted to his wife.
Okay.
We have examples of men who were unmarried who were elders, right?
Oh, of course.
I mean, apostles. We have Jesus himself. So we don't say that marriage is a qualification of eldership.
No, not at all.
We would say if a man is married, he must be qualified by his righteousness in that area.
Of course.
And the other thing we would say is that doesn't mean a man can never be married twice, right?
Right.
Because, for example, you could have a man who's married to someone, that person dies, and then they remarry again.
Right.
They're still a husband of one wife. They're still a one-woman man. It's just that they've been married now twice in a very biblical way, and both of those times they're devoted to them. Okay. So that's the basic principle.
Okay.
Now, implications flow out of that.
Lots.
Right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Well, we would say that a guy is qualified for this position, not just because he hasn't had an extramarital affair, per se.
Because that could, in a sense, be too easy.
Exactly.
Lots of people haven't had extramarital affairs.
Yeah,
it doesn't even qualify you. Right.
Yeah. But the way that Paul phrases it is fascinating. He says he's a one-woman man. In other words, for that man, there is only one woman. And that doesn't mean just physical. It means everything that's associated with that. For him, from the inside out, he has one woman in mind.
Yeah.
And that's his wife.
Yeah.
And so he is devoted to her in love.
Of course.
He protects his purity with her.
Ooh,
and so what that means
really
is that
good.
it's a guy who's not, like, for example, addicted to pornography.
Okay.
Or even looks at pornography.
Okay.
Battles lust in his mind. Does business with the lust in his own mind because he's devoted to this covenant that he has with her.
Okay.
And so his heart is wholly devoted to her.
Yeah.
Now that means he's not characterized by all of these other areas of where sexual temptation comes into his life. That he's making war against all of those things in such a way that he's repenting of them rapidly, being honest, being open, and eliminating those areas of sin in his life because of his devotion to her. And ultimately, his devotion to her is really a devotion to Christ, because that covenant is between him and his wife in the presence of God, in the presence of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a person whose spiritual life is mature enough to be able to have battled away those things.
Okay.
Not that he doesn't sin in his heart.
So you're not saying, obviously.
Yeah, but he's sort of pulled in those ropes of sin in such a way that he's dealing with those on the inside, in his mind, quickly repenting, rapidly turning away from those sins, not acting them out in any way, right? Whether it's a second glance or glancing at something on the internet or actively looking at pornography or having an extramarital affair, all of those would be disqualifying if they're done consistently.
Okay.
So that's where we would say the husband of one wife is a person who has dealt with those sin issues in his life in such a way that his heart is devoted to his spouse.
Okay, good.
Uniquely. There's no other woman for him.
She's the one gal for him.
She's the one girl for him.
Well.
Yeah. And that's where,
that's good.
Yeah, that's why we would say a guy who says, well, I've never had an extramarital affair. I just have this little problem on the side with pornography. We would say, dude, you don't meet the qualification. 100%. You're disqualified from being an elder at this time. Yeah. So we would encourage that guy to grow in such a way that he becomes a one-woman man and turn away from those sins.
Of course.
Not for the sake of eldership, but ultimately for the sake of Christ.
And his absolutely. That's so good. Now, obviously, there's lots of applications that flow out of them. We can't talk about all of them, but like, what you said about one-woman man, it's not like you just, I'm only physically with her, but every other way, you can't. Yeah. So that was really good, because that's like the heart issue behind it, right? Yeah,
he actually loves her, right? So there's a sense of devotion. Like the application of that is actually an issue of the heart.
Not so much only physical.
Yeah, only physical or only the eyes.
Okay.
He loves her. Yeah. Like there's a genuine affection in his heart for her in such a way that he's like, man, she's awesome. She's the girl for me. I that's who I'm. And you say, well, I mean, isn't that up to her? Doesn't she have to be lovable? And the text doesn't say that. It's very interesting. The text says his heart is for her.
Yeah.
Like she is his woman. He cares for her. He loves her. He has affection for her.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with her at all.
Yeah.
It's actually his heart.
Yeah.
Moving toward her in such a way that he's like, no matter what you're like, I love you.
Yeah.
I'm devoted to you.
Yeah.
And when you sin, I love you. And when you don't sin, I love you. There's a sense of that, which really is just Ephesians 5, right? And
that's
the
what
picture
I was going to say.
of Christ in the church.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So then, like outside of like addiction to pornography,
right?
Outside of physical breaking of the covenant,
right,
of a marriage, like, and the heart. This is, out of the heart the mouth speaks.
Right.
So this is not assuming that, but that as the foundation.
Right.
What about is there anything you could say, I don't know how to say this right, but like guards, barriers, things that are, not things that I don't need a list necessarily from you, but just like, like things that guys should be careful about.
Yeah.
Guys who want to be elders, pastors, let's say guys want to be pastors.
Yeah.
Like so many temptations out there, so many things just all over the place.
Yeah.
Relationships with women in the church.
Yeah.
Relationships with technology, obviously, but
it's so hard.
Yeah. Are there any just a few things
general guidelines
that just jump out to you more than others? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw out a couple, and then you should probably throw a couple out too. But I would say, I think if the heart is devoted to your wife, right. But you're also aware that you're a sinner, right? You're still in your physical flesh.
Yeah.
So there's a potential that you could sin in all sorts of ways.
This is true.
And so in a desire to not sin, what do? And Jesus said, cut off a hand if you must, gouge out an eye if you must. So I would say,
absolutely,
even to the extremity of protection, we want to be as protective as we can of that heart love for your wife.
Okay.
Which means I would say, when it comes to relationships with other women, we'll start there.
Okay, no, please.
I would say meeting with another woman is going to be very unhelpful if it's in a private setting, not in public. Meeting individually with a woman in a private setting is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like we live in corporate America, right? And so you might have someone who's your boss.
Yeah.
And she's female.
Yeah. And
she says, "Hey, come into my office. I want to have a conversation with you about your."
You can't get around
your
that.
Review. Yeah. But I mean, corporate America is also wise enough to know, especially in this age,
all the harassment cases and everything.
All the walls are glass for a reason, right? So there's a protective sense there. I would say that's fine.
Yeah.
But if a woman says, "Hey, come over to my apartment. We'll discuss your review,"
that's not happening.
I would say, "Let's discuss my review in the conference room where everybody else is."
You'd rather get fired.
I'd rather get fired than go over there. Yeah, because there's a potential that there's something going on there, right?
Well, that would be weird in and of itself.
Yeah, it'd be weird in itself. You'd be like,
but yes.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah,
right?
even if it was legit, it feels weird, so you need to be careful.
Just be super cautious.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want to be, obviously, like in relationship with women, and then as a pastor, as a minister, you want to be very cautious how you meet with another woman, right?
Okay.
So like in areas where doors are open and it's public and there are people who can come in and out of that area. You can still have a private conversation, but just have it in such a way that it would be very easy for someone to come in and see what's happening, so that there's no question that that you're being careful, you're being
Absolutely.
safe.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's where we would say in relation to other ladies in the church and outside the church, protecting that one woman relationship by putting up those guards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about with technology? What would you say?
No, I think what you said is the same thing. I guess some of that could also just, because it's hard to lay down one absolute rule for everyone. I mean, there's accountability software. Right. Where you have partners who check, who get, reports, like coveted eyes, things like that. So I think that's helpful. Yeah. Like, to whatever degree you need to have whatever, that's up between you and the Lord. But I think having some basic measure of protection is very helpful, because it's so easy to just, nowadays it's so easy. I think that's just wisdom.
It's just a danger, right? Yeah. You just want to be cautious.
Yeah. Especially with phones and stuff, more so than even computer, which is, just freer access in ways that are so easy, one click away. Yeah. It's weird because, when you think about, then you go beyond that. Go beyond, like, just pornography. Yeah. Everything else. Yeah. It's hard to lay down absolute rules. Yeah, you almost can't. Yeah. You almost can. And I don't want to give off that air, like... No. At the same time, you... But I do think that there's, in this area in particular, we want to be just realistic about ourselves. Like you said, we are sinners. We're men. And I haven't met many who don't have this struggle, at least to some degree, or have had it. Yeah. And had it. Many have had it intensely. Yeah. Unfortunately. Absolutely. And so, just the things that we watch, things that we're around. Yeah. And if those things, those are like gateways, if you will.
An area where you are already struggling.
Yeah. Or they just incite that in your heart. You might want to think twice about that. Yeah. For sure. Prayerfully, either cut that out of your life or whatever you need to do, type of thing.
Yeah. And so the overall image there is like moving toward openness, accountability. Yeah. So like maybe you don't struggle with pornography, but putting a software on your computer that filters everything you get through the internet, and then also alerts somebody else if something else comes through. Right. It's actually helpful, even if you're not necessarily struggling with that. Right. It just puts fences around you. Yeah. Just knowing who we are, it just puts fences around us. Not because we're depending on the fences for righteousness. Exactly. But because we love Christ, we depend on Him for righteousness, and we know our flesh is still attached to us, and we want to guard that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't want to presume on our ability to fight sin.
Yeah, exactly.
And so... Yeah, and I think what you said about openness, transparency, like that's important. Yeah. Particularly in leadership.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. With other leaders.
Yeah, even in elder culture.
That's what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's super helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, well, if you have any questions on this issue, obviously it's a sensitive one, but if you have any questions on this issue, we'd love to get emails from you. Our email is info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.